how did you decide what college football team you were going to root for? Was it because of where you're from, where your parents went to college, or maybe a favorite player? Well, for me, it was a bit more complicated, or maybe it was even a bit more simple. I became a football fan around 2008, and my parents were fans of rival teams. My dad was a Florida State fan, and my mom was a Florida fan. Gross, I know. Either way, both of them made efforts to pull me to their side. So, with all of the other factors out of the way and two choices to choose from, it ended up coming down to one very important thing, and that was branding. Well, primarily their logo. And if I was going to root for a team, I want to root for a cool team. I mean, what else was a 7-year-old kid going to care about at the time? Even then, that decision proved pretty hard because Florida and Florida State have really cool logos, but I personally preferred Florida State's, and the rest was history. So, go Noles. But now that the 2025 season is over and we have no more games to break down, I figured it might be interesting to go conference by conference and rank the logos with the conference where it all began for me, the ACC. They may not be the best at football, but they have some very clean logos. But we're going to start at the bottom with some not so clean logos. Anyways, sit back, relax, maybe like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into it. At the very bottom, we have Wake Forest. And in my future videos, you will become very familiar with my distaste for plain gold and black letter logos. They just do not do it for me. They're boring, they don't stand out, and I never have much to say about them. They just don't tell me much about the school, the mascot, or the area the team is in. They are far from intimidating, not to mention that they usually belong to some pretty bad teams. So that's a correlation that's not necessarily the logo's fault, but it's still there. And I just think there's nothing iconic about this Wake Forest logo. Just look at it and tell me that you feel anything at all. It simply just exists. I mean, if we really want to get into the nitty gritty, there are a few things we can talk about. First off, I am very glad they made the minor change in 2019 of changing the shade of gold in the logo. It was quite literally my least favorite logo in all of college athletics before, with that darker poop gold. I don't know how else to describe it because that's what it looked like to me. The lighter tan gold is much more pleasant, and it makes it more inoffensive rather than outright gross. And there will be some people that genuinely do like this logo because it is minimal, it's legible, symmetrical, it's timeless. And the serifs on the letters do make it feel more academic, which fits the school. And I think it's kind of what they were going for. And in their defense, the logo on the helmet can look a bit better when they actually use the glossy gold look, but the primary logo that I found online is more of a tan gold that does not stand out, but it just doesn't work for me personally. It isn't very distinct, it's way too safe, it has no energy or motion, and it just does not feel like it strongly reflects the identity of the team other than the academic serifs I mentioned earlier. And even those get lost because they're pretty small and hard to notice at game speed. Sure, it's a clean logo, but it does not do much to appease my personal preferences in logos, so that's why I have it at the very bottom. At number 16, I have Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech is low for very similar reasons as Wake Forest was. I do find that it stands out a bit more than the Wake Forest logo, mostly because it has a bit more energy. It's more stylized, and the navy blue looks better in contrast than the Wake Forest black does. I think the logo has a more iconic look. It's bigger, it's bolder, and I think it's better, but it still doesn't tell me much about the team, where they're from, or their mascot, which isn't necessary. There are some logos that are really good that don't have affiliation with the mascot, but they usually do a little more to stand out than this. Yes, this logo stands out when compared to the Wake Forest logo, but not against teams higher on this list. And I'm going to contradict myself here because some of the points I made about the Wake Forest logo, I feel the opposite about when it comes to the Georgia Tech logo. I almost feel like this logo is over-stylized for the type of logo they're going for. It just makes it feel less timeless. It almost looks squished and stretched and a bit cramped even. And I feel like the proportions are pretty off. So while it makes it more unique, it does so in a not so great way. I will still take it over a boring standard interlocking logo like the Wake Forest logo, but I still think this logo misses the mark as a whole. And unlike Wake Forest, this logo does feel less academic and more athletic, but for a school like Georgia Tech, I almost prefer that academic look. Maybe it's just because I don't care for this logo specifically, but I think it could use some tightening up. So overall, I do like that they try to stylize the logo a bit more, but I don't like the route that they ended up going to do that. I would have preferred them to go with a different logo entirely than trying to bring this kind of stylization to what is normally a timeless and standard interlocking letter logo. It's like they are trying to mix and match two styles that just don't really work well when put together. It just clashes too much for my taste, and it ends up feeling mechanical but not expressive. It's not timeless and it lacks character, which is not a good combo. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, at number 15, I have Boston College. And this logo is very conflicting for me. On one hand, it pains me to put a logo that has such a clear mascot connection this low. I love logos that show off their mascot and has this kind of personality, but the logo as a whole just doesn't work for me. If they took out the interlocking letters in the background, I think I would like this logo a lot more because the eagle itself looks pretty awesome and it would stand out perfectly on its own. But when you put it in front of these letters, it makes for a pretty illegible and busy logo. The maroon on the eagle just blends in way too much with the maroon on the lettering, and I really don't like the font design on the letters anyways. It feels like very early 2000s, which makes sense because it is from the early 2000s. It's just overly stylized and very dated to me. And the colors are fine, I guess. They are similar to Force State's color scheme, but I just don't think they use the colors nearly as well. Feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. So if they took away the letters, the logo would be a lot closer to the top. But for now, it is getting held back significantly. At number 14, I have Virginia Tech. And this is the best version of an interlocking logo that the ACC has to offer. And if you can't tell, the interlocking style usually is not my thing, and that is no different here, but I do think this one is a bit more unique. And this logo is really hard for me to explain my feelings about because the same things that I like about this logo are the same things that I don't like about it, if that makes sense. The colors in this logo don't really work for me. Maroon and orange shouldn't really go together, and yet that is what makes it stand out as an iconic logo. The stylization and design of the lettering feels a bit outdated, and yet that is part of what makes it unique among interlocking logos. This logo has a distinct identity that manages to have personality without having any mascot connection, which feels a bit rare, honestly. But it's really hard for me to place this much higher because it also is a bit of an eyesore, and it still is just letters at the end of the day. At number 13, I have Syracuse. And I know some of you may be surprised to see a simple block letter so high on my list, but I am a sucker for a good block letter logo. They just feel very collegiate, and they look so good on a sweatshirt. And I think that this block letter in particular is really nice. I really like the contrast between the bright orange and the navy blue. It grabs your attention immediately. And not all block letters are the same, but the letter S looks really good in block form. Very symmetrical, strong, balanced, and it just doesn't have any clutter. You can't call this logo illegible. This S can be spotted from a mile away. It's just a traditional logo, and if you like that kind of logo, it does the job. It can't really be put much higher because it is super generic. It doesn't have much connection to the location or the mascot. It lacks energy, and in reality, it's pretty flat, but I like it a lot. I think it stands out amongst block letter logos because of the letter structure and the strong color scheme. At number 12, I have Duke, and the Duke logo takes a very different approach to that single letter design. It's a very iconic logo that works both as an academic logo and as a sports logo. It definitely fits a prestigious university like Duke, and that balance is something that we mentioned was missing from Georgia Tech and Wake Forest logos earlier in the video. It has an overly gothic design that fits the brand very well, but it's almost a bit too much for me. I just think the D is a little off. I don't know if they went too far or not far enough, but minimalizing such a classic typography leaves us with a letter logo that comes off a bit awkward to me. It still has some sense of gothic design in the way it uses angles, but mixing that with a more simplistic logo just is not my favorite thing in the world. Still, I love the royal blue. It's one of my favorite colors, so that works for me, and I can definitely appreciate the logo for its uniqueness and versatility. At number 11, I have Miami. Boo. This is probably going to upset a lot of people, and it's probably my hottest take in the video. The Miami logo is undoubtedly one of the most iconic logos in sports, but it's just not for me. Now, that may partially be because of my bias against the team wearing that logo. I hate Miami. I am a known Miami hater, and it's hard to remove my negative bias when I see this logo, but I really don't think that's the only reason I'm not a fan of this logo. For one, I do not think that orange and green complement each other despite them being complementary colors. Again, maybe it's just a me thing, but I am just not a fan of that color combo. Secondly, it is just a single letter logo. Now, admittedly, the single letter logo has a bit more juice to it since it does connect more to the university, considering it reflects the hand sign Miami fans do to show support for their team. But I always found it funny that instead of an M, like so many other teams, they use the U for the university part of the school's name, since most universities start with or have that university in them. University of Georgia, University of Alabama. Like, that's not specific to Miami, but that's just what they decided to go with, I guess. And to Miami's credit, they use an entirely unique letter form that makes their logo stand out and avoid being just another generic letter logo. And while the colors do not work for me, the fact that they are split symmetrically between both sides of the U is a nice touch. It's simple, it's bold, it's unique, but it's not elite. It's a standard sans serif U that is stretched a bit too wide with really ugly colors. So it's lucky to be this high on my list, and I'm not really sorry about it. At number 10, I have Cal. And I am a sucker for a good classic logo, and Cal fits the bill. As with most cursive logos, it flows excellently and it has great energy. And the italicized nature gives it some pretty nice motion, I think. It's another logo that I think strikes a good balance between athletic and academic, which again fits their brand. I like the tail. It gives the logo a good sense of visual completion, and the cursive is simple enough to maintain legibility. I wouldn't say it's the most intimidating logo, and the darker navy blue isn't exactly my favorite color for the logo anyways. It does have all the benefits of a script logo, but it doesn't do anything to elevate itself. And the color scheme makes it more bland and uninteresting than it could have been. I do think it stands out more on the helmet, but it doesn't quite stand out on its own, so that's why it isn't any higher. At number 9, I have Stanford. Now, what happens when you take a block S and add some mascot affiliation to it? Well, you get the Stanford logo. Adding the tree in the middle of the logo is a net positive, as evident by the fact that I have it a lot higher than, say, the Syracuse logo. But it does not come without its drawbacks. It does take away from the bold and strong and intimidating aspects that come with a block letter logo. And it does make the logo a bit less legible and a bit more clustered. It also, though, makes the logo more unique with more personality. There's no longer a generic logo that could be put on a variety of different teams. It is distinctly Stanford. As I mentioned before, I love seeing mascot affiliation in a logo, and unlike with Boston College, the color contrast does not clash. The white tree stands out against the cardinal red. I was a bit sad when they changed the logo in 2015, making the tree white instead of green. I like the mix of color, but I understand that it may have called more attention to the tree than the S, and maybe the logo was a bit too busy then. Either way, the change did not change my opinion on the logo too much. I will point out that the quirky and playful design of the tree does clash a bit with a more traditional and collegiate style of the block S, but it doesn't really bother me too much. I actually think that contrast works fine, so it's a solid logo that I definitely do enjoy quite a bit. At number 8, I have North Carolina. And this is probably another hot take, but I have North Carolina here at 9. It's a good logo, or at 8, sorry. It's a good logo, don't get me wrong. It's iconic, it stands out, it's legible, it's unique, but traditional, it's balanced, it's timeless, and it has an incredible color scheme. I really do love how the baby blue contrasts with the darker blue. Technically, it is a great logo, but when I bring in my personal preferences, it just does not call out to me personally. Most of the logos higher on this list do appeal to those preferences, like script logos or mascot integration, and this one just doesn't. It is a stylized, overlapping letter logo, and it's one of the best in that style, but for me, I prefer my logos that offer more of a something intimidating and aggressive. This definitely has a more academic and professional approach, and while it looks great on a hoodie, I just personally don't think it's a top logo in the conference to me. And I think earlier I said Virginia Tech is the best interlocking letter logo or overlapping, which one of the two. This one is better than that. Obviously, I have it higher, so I misspoke on that earlier. Anyways, at number 7, I have Pitt, and this logo is evidence of how much colors can impact a logo. Before 2019, the logo would have been near the bottom of my list. As much as I love a script logo, the darker and more muted blue and gold did not work for me, but the modern royal blue and yellow color scheme is excellent. It has such great contrast that stands out, and it accentuates everything I love about a script logo, as the motion, the flow, the energy I mentioned with the Cal logo, and then some. I really like the font they use for the cursive here. It feels very distinct and unique, especially where the T's meet. I also like how the P is accentuated at the beginning. Sure, it does not fit the intimidating and aggressive notes or the mascot integration aspects that I mentioned. You would see a lot near the top of my list, but it is a really fun logo that I like a lot, so that's why it's here. At number 6, I have Virginia, and every logo from this point on will have some sort of mascot integration. For Virginia, they have those cross sabers under the V that I just love. It is perfect. It's a perfect way to combine a simple letter logo with just a hint of mascot integration. It does not have to sacrifice legibility, and it does not interfere with the focal points. It works as a one cohesive logo. Not to mention that I'm a big fan of the color scheme here. It's very similar to Syracuse's color scheme, but it's got that bold orange and the dark blue that just work for me. And if you look really closely, the logo even has some depth to it with the beveling inside the V as part of the logo, which gives it a little bit of an extra flair. I think the logo remains professional, simple, but also intimidating and just awesome. At number 5, I have Clemson. Talk about an iconic logo. I love this logo. It's a unique take on what is otherwise a very common mascot. The paw stands out as untraditionally intimidating and imposing, and it doesn't need to be an aggressive, snarling tiger with claws or anything like that. The paw speaks for itself. It's bold, it's simple, it's very legible, and has a very strong identity, and especially in the color department where that just solid orange is just very versatile. Both the white and the orange version of this logo look great on helmets and sweatshirts, and it's an excellent way to integrate the mascot without making super detailed and busy logos. It's just a very, very clean logo that is executed at a very high level. Sometimes it is the simple logos that I think work the best. At number 4, I have Louisville, and this logo is all the things that I like in a logo. It's fierce, it's intimidating, and it prominently features that mascot. I love the facial expression of the logo, even if it does include teeth, which I've never really known a Cardinal to have teeth, but oh well. That's just always something I've found kind of silly about this logo, but still super cool. I really like the thick black outline. I think it really makes the logo pop, and it contrasts pretty well with the red. Speaking of the red, I do like the colors as a whole in this logo. It managed to have a 3-color scheme and not being, too busy or overcomplicated. And that extends beyond just the color scheme. The whole logo has a good amount of detail without feeling overcomplicated. It's a very modern design with clean lines, sharp edges. I actually think that the yellow beak works pretty well to contrast the other colors. But yeah, this logo, it's direct, it's fierce, it has energy, it's got motion, all the things that I've praised in other logos. The teeth are really the only flaw in this logo, but I don't think this logo would look quite as fierce without them. So again, doesn't bother me too much, but it's hard not to notice once you realize that it has them. At number 3, I have SMU, the Mustangs, and this logo is awesome. Another great example of a prominently featured mascot logo. And the Mustang is such a cool mascot and works great for a logo. The horse looks so powerful, it's fast, it's competitive, the angles around the head and the hooves add to it instantly. Clearly has motion and energy since the Mustang is clearly mid-stride. The silhouette design prevents it from being too busy or overcomplicated. It's just very legible. It gets the image across with very minimal details. Just one solid color throughout, which makes it very versatile. It works in any scale, any color. It just makes great use of negative space. I think it's a very timeless logo. It really stands out to me. It's super recognizable, super clean, and one of the best logos in the conference. And I had a really hard time picking between my number 1 and my number 2 on this list, but I am biased, so that made the decision a lot easier. That being said, at number 2, I have North Carolina State. I love the traditional cartoon look on the NC State logo. A lot of schools used to have a very similar style logo, but to my knowledge, NC State is the only team that has stuck to it, and that makes me very happy. Maybe Kansas as well, but still, it's big, it's bold, and man, does it look aggressive. Sure, the amount of detail may make it less legible at smaller sizes, but it's so dang cool that I would take that trade-off in an instant. If you prefer modern minimalist logos, this one is definitely not for you, but as someone who loves traditional and retro logos, this is just incredible, and I appreciate NC State for sticking to it. It's got the sharp teeth, the sharp angles, it's intense, it's so tough, and it just has that fighting edge. It uses negative space incredibly well. Red and black is not a unique color combo, but it almost always looks great, and it definitely does in this case. But let's pull all the technical stuff aside. It just rocks, dude. Just look at it. It's a top 5 logo in college football, period. And unfortunately, it's up against maybe my favorite logo in football and the logo of one of my favorite teams, Florida State. I cannot think of something more intimidating and awesome as this logo. It's literally a visual representation of a battle cry. It definitely falls into the iconic tier. It's super recognizable and for good reason. It has everything I want in a logo, the energy, the motion, the mascot prominently featured, but it also is a very nuanced logo in a way that no other logo in this conference, and maybe even the country, is. It manages to not only be fierce and stoic, but also emotional in a way. I love the interior details, the feather, the hair, the war paint, all of it. To some, it may be busy, and I can understand that, but to me, it is a perfect balance of detail and simplicity, and it benefits from maybe the best color scheme in the country. I love the garnet and gold that fits the logo so well. It's literally the perfect logo. I don't think it would work as well on a helmet because of how much detail is within it, but it doesn't have to because Florida State has an iconic helmet that does not need the logo. It's just an awesome logo, dude. I love it. It's one of my favorite teams, so I have an emotional connection to it. So yeah, I'm biased. Oh well. But that's a video for another day. Anyways, that wraps up my ranking of every ACC logo. And if you want to see me rank the logos in every other conference, like, comment, subscribe, and see you next time. Peace.